Hey everyone. So today I'm going to be showing you how to achieve this style of rendering. I like to call it the Nintendo style of rendering. This is in Maya's Arnold. And what exactly do I mean by Nintendo style? So let's bring up some references here that I found. I really like these. So I wanted to try to emulate this. And I tried finding videos about how to achieve this style. Couldn't find any, so I figured I would just do it myself and share my findings with you guys. So I just want to note a couple of things about these renders here um, that we're going to try to emulate. For one, a lot of soft shapes, not a lot of hard edges. Obviously, there's some like here on the mustache and stuff, but generally you have really soft shapes. Um, Another thing is rim lights are pretty prevalent in most of these renders, but they're very soft rim lights. Previously, I used to have very hard edges on these rim lights, which I thought looked pretty good, but they don't really emulate this kind of style that we're going for. And the other thing, all of these have a high amount of subsurface scattering, which is really nice as well. And the last thing that I noted is just if you notice in all of these, it's really simple diffuse, almost flat colors. There is some like difference in there's some bump on like the clothing and some bump on the shoes and stuff, and you can see there's a bit of like AO going on here in the diffuse. There definitely is some colors in the diffuse, but it's essentially just a flat color. Okay, so let's get started here. So I'm going to right click and then assign a new material, go down to Arnold shader, and then AI standard surface. And this just gives it a new material. We're going to call this skin, not sin, skin. And we're just going to lower the color here. You don't have to do this. This is purely just so it's easier for us to see the lighting. And then speaking of which, I'm going to show our lighting setup here. This is a really simple, just standard 3-point lighting setup that you're going to have for most of your models. This is pretty subjective. It matters entirely on how your model looks. Like if your model is any larger than mine, has a different shape, which it will, you're going to have to tweak the lighting to best match that. But the rules are the same. You want to have your key light here, which is just your main light. The intensity is pretty high on it, and I just have a nice like warm color on it. And then you want to have your, let's just open this up here, you want to have your fill light, which is going to fill the shadows that are cast by this light here. So you're not going to have any dark ugly shadows. I'll show you those in a second, how it looks like without the fill light. And then my personal favorite is the rim light, which is just a strong backlight, which is going to outline and separate your model from the background. It makes a massive difference. And then the change I have from the standard 3-point setup, I have this large disc light that is entirely for one purpose, and I'll show you that now. So let's open up our Arnold render view and render. Let's just make sure it's showing the actual render camera here. So I'll toggle on and off the lights so you can see exactly what they're all doing. So right now it's going to go completely dark. So we'll start off with our key light. Let's unhide that. And you can see it's just a standard light, but it's casting really ugly black shadows. So how do you fix that? You fix that with a fill light. The numbers on the right here and all these settings, you can just copy what I'm showing here. But it's very likely that it won't look the same as mine because your model is going to be different. So, take with a grain of salt, tweak it to what looks good for you. You're going to have to use your artistic eye here. So we're going to turn on the fill light, and you can see that for the most part, it's gotten rid of a lot of our dark shadows. You can see there's still a bit of black on the outlines, on the outer edges, I mean. But for the most part, it's taken it from this ugly, black shadows to kind of brighten them up. And because our color is cooler, it kind of gives it a nice two-tone effect. You get kind of a cooler side here and then a warmer side on the right. And then our third light here is the rim light. So if I unhide that, you can see it casts just this nice bright light behind him. What that's going to do, like I said earlier, is it's going to separate the model from the background and give it some dimensionality. And normally this would be enough lighting, but his eyes look super dead. So what I did is I made another light specifically to give it that nice characteristic cartoon eye spec, just to make him look more alive, because I just felt he looked kind of dead here. Excuse me. And it serves a dual purpose because it is like a physically accurate light. It's also going to light up our model and get rid of some of these dark areas. So we're going to go ahead and unhide that. And as you can see here, it totally brightened up the model. And to some, this might be blown out and overly bright, but the Nintendo style that we're going for is very bright, very saturated. So we can go ahead and push that quite a bit. But as you can see, this has added such a nice spec to our eyes. Gives it a lot of dimensionality and overall just really nice look. So you can go ahead and tweak that as much as you want. Our feet and our hands are getting kind of dark, so we can fix that. Again, it's just a lot of tweaking. You can sit here for hours just tweaking and tweaking. You'll never be done. But for the purposes of this tutorial, let's just say we're happy with this. So now that our lighting is done, we're gonna do the next step, which is to go into Substance Painter and make our texture. And your Substance Painter may look a little different than mine. But it should serve the same purpose. You don't even need to use Substance Painter, to be honest. You can use any program of choice. If I isolate the base color here, you can see there's really not much to it. So you can achieve this in any software really. If I just toggle all these off, oops. Yeah, and then we add just the rest of our diffuse. This is obviously like completely unique to my model. You just color it the way that you're going to color your model. But we still, if we isolate the base color, it is still just entirely that, just base color. There's nothing else to it. We have our mouth, and then the first thing that I've done is using the thickness map, which you got here in the when you baked your mesh maps, the thickness map. Using that, I have given it kind of a subtle subsurface scattering effect. It's really subtle. Let's isolate the base color. It's more obvious around the mouth, just because the lips are kind of thinner than the rest of the model. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference. Yeah, essentially, if I open this up, you can see it starts off with just a fill. But when you bake out the thickness map, it's actually it's inverted, so you need to invert that. So I've added a levels and just hit invert. That's it. And then I just did some cleanup. I found that the thickness map was a little too trigger happy with the chin here, so I just cleaned that up. I just kind of drew over it. But this is obviously like way too harsh, so I just kind of gave the whole thing a blur. And there we go. So that's pretty much our subsurface scattering map. And then I just have a little eyeliner for him. And if we go to our base color, I baked out an ambient occlusion map, and again, this is super subtle. Like you don't want to go too crazy with anything here. You want to keep it as simple as possible. So essentially, this is only adding just the little like mouth AO and the nostrils. And then the other thing that I've done is just give it a really basic roughness and diffuse variation using a black and white spots mask, and it's really subtle. If I zoom all the way in, maybe you can see it. It's just changing. It's just giving it a bit of breakup. Maybe it's more obvious in the roughness if I were to move the lights a little bit. Oops. Yeah, it's almost completely imperceptible, but it's just giving it a bit of breakup in the roughness and diffuse. And then another very subtle layer that I've added is just little layer bumps. This one's a little more obvious, just to give it some texture variation. And then the least subtle part about this whole thing, and I think it makes a huge difference, in Substance Painter, you can add something called baked lighting, which, as the name implies, you're baking the lighting into the diffuse. So it projects lights within Substance Painter and then bakes those lights into the diffuse. And it gives you just like, it's free detail. It's incredible. So if I turn that on, you can see it basically just like, it makes it look like a nice lit model, but this is in the base color. So obviously like it's brighter up top and darker where the shadow is being cast. It's physically accurate. But that's it. That's our entire texture. Super simple. So once that's done, you export the textures. You just go File, Export Textures. And the only things that you want are the color, the roughness, and the normal. And just while we're at it, a little spoiler for the later part of the tutorial. What you're also going to want is change this from whatever it is. Right now it's just on Arnold, but it might be on something different for you. And you're going to scroll down to Mesh Maps. And then you're going to want to export none of these except for thickness, which if you hover over it, it should give you the whole name. Yeah. So you want to export the thickness map, which is going to be what we plug our subsurface scattering into. Okay, so we're done with that. Once we've exported that, we can go back to Maya. So let's go back. So we have our model here. It's looking a little too gray. Let's just go ahead and hide those lights so they don't get in our way. And then we can start plugging in all of our maps. So let's open up the Windows node editor. And now we can graph our materials to the node editor. So we're here, and then we're going to do AI image. And I get that by pressing tab, and then you can just type out whatever you want. So we're going to get 2 AI images. And because we exported 3 maps here, normally you'd do a third AI image. But I found for the normal map, it doesn't seem to be able to tell that it's a normal map because of the color space or whatever it may be. And it just doesn't work for me. So what I like to do for this one is just do an AI normal. And then if you go to input and you click this icon right here, you can just click file. And it just creates a file node. It's a little different than the AI image, but the difference is with this file node is you can actually manually change the color space. So you can change it from sRGB to raw. And that basically is just telling the material here that this is not a color, this is information. And so yeah, we're good there. Let's add a AI ramp RGB. And this is going to be essentially like a levels node. Or like a levels in Photoshop, if you're familiar with that. So, and then just preemptively, I like to do an AI color correct node and plug our diffuse into that. You might not even use it, but it's nice to just kind of have it so you don't have to add it on later. It's just nice to have it. So we're going to go ahead and start plugging things in. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can either hold shift and then middle mouse drag onto the node you want to connect. And you have this connection editor, which we will be using, but it can be kind of overwhelming, I find, just seeing all of these options. So what you can also do, and I think it's really intuitive, is you not holding shift, just middle mouse click into the input that you want. You can put it anywhere you want, and in this case, we want it to be input. And then same thing, you can go here to click on the material, and then middle mouse drag into color. And then for the spec roughness, we're going to click and drag that into input. And then you want to change this type V to custom. Cool. And now for spec roughness. So currently, there's no way for the computer to know that this is information. Right now, it thinks this is just a black and white color. So what we need to do for this is add an AI RGBA to float node. And this is going to be converting an RGB texture map into information, which is what we want. So you're going to take this, drag it in input, and then change the mode from average to luminance. And then you're going to take this node and finally drag that into spec roughness. And another thing you have to do, I'm sure there's a way around it, just to avoid this entirely, but I find that when you drag it in, it doesn't discriminate between out alpha and color, and you don't want alpha, you want color. So you're going to open that up. You can do this, by the way, I've been doing this. You can press 3 on a specific node to open it and collapse it, or you can press 3 by clicking outside, and you can open all of them at the same time. But in our case, let's just open this one and this one up, and we want to open up the drop-down menu for color and then drag out color R into input. We can collapse those. So now those are nice and plugged in, and then we can take these guys. And so this is where we can use the connection editor. We can just show that off right now. So you're going to hold Shift and then middle mouse drag to the material. And you're going to go out value, and then you want to hit normal camera. And if you're not seeing this, hit right display and then show hidden. Not sure why it's hidden. It's just a Maya thing, I guess. But if you're not seeing it, that's how you can open it up. So we're going to do out value, normal camera. We can close that. Now we have our main texture maps plugged in. And really, that's like most of our material. Like we're pretty much halfway there, maybe even more. So let's just go ahead and actually connect our materials, or our texture maps, I mean. Right now we have nothing, so let's do that right now. Okay, so we've connected everything now. And let's go ahead and just render that and see where we're at. So as you can see, there's something funky going on with our model here. And this is actually good. This is happening. I can show you this. This is what happens when the color space of your normal map is incorrect. So if we click on this file node, you can see it is sRGB, which is not what we want. You want to, once again, scroll down and hit raw. Cool. So that's been fixed. You can see there is no more funk. It is correct now. It is actually doing what it needs to be doing. Just because I've obviously done this before, I'm going to go ahead and just tweak the color settings here, just because it's a little not how I want it. This is why we add the color correct node. It's nice to just be able to just kind of tweak these colors as you'd like. So I'm just going to input these numbers. Okay, so I've done some tweaking just with our ramp RGB node here, which is our spec roughness and our color correcting here. I've just basically made it look a little bit more how I want. The roughness map was a little too glossy, which if we look at our reference here, no material here is too glossy. There is a bit of gloss to their skin, but nothing too crazy. I think it was a little too crazy on ours. So we've tweaked it, we've tweaked the colors, and now we're happy with where we're at. And before we start plugging in on the rest of our stuff, let's go into our material node here. And let's tweak some settings here. The IOR for this speculator, this is index of reflection. There is some documentation on Maya's website, so you can take a look at what real life IOR is for materials. But I find that for skin, 1.45 is the best. It might not make a difference for you. That's okay. Just input it anyways. And then let's go into subsurface, and we'll plug in our map to this. But for now, let's just kind of bring it up to just whatever number. And for subsurface color, we're gonna want something kind of fleshy. So let's do something like, sure, something like this, maybe a little more red, something like that. And you can see this is like totally wrong, but we're getting somewhere. Radius, we'll bring that down to, let's do like something like that. This is going to change depending on your model. You're gonna have to just tweak it. You can start with my numbers and then tweak it from there. But the most important thing is the scale here. We're gonna change this to random walk v2. I find there's not much of a difference between these calculations. It's pretty much random for me. I've just put random walk v2. It just seems like the best option for me. And the anisotropy, you want to change that to 0.069 in my case for skin. And like I said, scale is the most important one for me. This is in relation to the actual real scale of your model, which in my case is pretty small. So we're gonna have to put this way down, and it's a very sensitive number, especially once you get lower in the scale. So we're gonna do, what I've done is 0.018. And that gives us more what we want. But as you can see, it's too hot. It's too bright. But we'll fix that with plugging in our node and also using an AI ramp RGB node to kind of tweak those numbers. But for now, this is getting a lot more to what we want. This is a little too red, actually. Let's turn this a little pinker. Sure, that's fine. Let's go ahead and pause that render, and then we're going to start plugging in our thickness. So we're going to do an AI ramp RGB, an AI image node. And because right now, again, the shader has no way of knowing that this is information right now. It just thinks it's a color, which we don't want. You're going to do an AI RGBA to float node. And then we'll start plugging all those guys in. This one, middle mouse drag and input. Change this to custom. And then this. You can drag that into input and change this to luminance. And once again, change it from out alpha to the out color R. You can collapse those. And then lastly, we'll take our material and then drag the RGBA to float into our weight. So now it's not going to be a number, it's going to be a texture map, which let's go ahead and plug that in. And here we have the thickness map that I baked out. And then once we start the render again, you can see that it's less overall red, and it's been isolated to the areas that we've denoted in our map. So if we isolate that render, you can see exactly where it's being affected. It's good, but I find that it's a little too hot in some of these areas, namely like the eyelids and the chin especially. You can see it's like bright red, which doesn't look amazing. It's not exactly what we're looking for. It looks really nice on the arms here, the fingers. It looks pretty good everywhere except for the chin and the eyelids. The eyelids are like bright red. So what we can do is go into our ramp node, and we can isolate that, and let's kind of let's bring down the value of this. You can do this by clicking on the one that you want, and then selected color, and then you can bring down the value. And let's bring it down to like, yeah, something like that's fine. You see, this is basically just making it have less influence. And then let's bring that like that. Make that a little darker, actually. Sure. And here we go. As you can see, it's less hot, less red, but it still gives that nice soft material quality of skin. So we're in a good state. We're looking pretty good here. However, there is one more very important thing that I find lends itself to the look of this Nintendo style, and that is an AI facing ratio node. It's kind of a mouthful, but what is an AI facing ratio node? If anyone is familiar with game engines, this is a Fresnel node. And if you don't know what a Fresnel node is, I will show you. I think it's just a little better if I show you rather than explaining it. But I will explain it once I show you. So let's go ahead. Because we want this to be information again, not a color, we're going to add our favorites, AI ramp RGB, to be able to tweak it. We want to do an AI RGBA to float. And then because we want to be combining all of this with our diffuse color, let's pull those back, and we'll add an AI layer RGBA node. And this layer RGBA node, as the name suggests, allows us to layer different nodes together to have a single output. So with that being said, let's start connecting everything up. Let's click on a ramp here and then take our facing ratio node and then drag that into custom or input, sorry, and then change the type from V to custom. And then let's take this node and then drag this into input, change that to luminance. And now these are nice and connected. And now we want to start layering these guys with this guy. So let's open up our layer RGBA node. And our layer 1 is going to be our base diffuse. So we'll name that base diffuse. And then we can leave everything as is. And then we need to enable the second layer. And we're going to call this one Fresnel or whatever you like. And then our input, which is just our color, just make that completely white. And then in our mix is where we're going to plug in all of the stuff up here. So we're going to middle mouse drag from here into our mix. And our input for base diffuse is going to be our AI color correct node, which is our colors or our diffuse map. So we're going to middle mouse drag that into input. And you can leave the mix as is. And then we can click on our material and then take this node, which is our layer node, and drag that into color. So now it's become one input. It's basically siphoned it into a single input, and we can basically do all of our changes in here. So what is this going to do once we start rendering? Let's hit render. Absolutely nothing. And that's because we need to go into the operation for the Fresnel. And if you're familiar with layer styles in Photoshop, this is the exact same thing. Right now it's on overwrite, and you want to change that to screen. And that looks horrible. That is not what we're looking for. So how do we fix this? Well, first we need to see exactly what an AI facing ratio node is. So if we isolate this, you can see it's maybe a little less obvious before we start changing or messing around with the ramp. Once I do, maybe it'll become a little bit more obvious as to what it's doing. So what the AI facing ratio does is it basically masks out anything that is not facing the camera. So everything that's facing the camera is white. And everything that is not facing the camera, facing away from the camera, is black, which is good, but it's not what we want. We want it to be the opposite. We want it to be everything that is not facing the camera is white. And that's what gives us that Fresnel effect, that nice, like almost fake rim lighting effect. So we can do that simply by just switching these two. You bring the white over to the left, the black over to the right. So whoop, and there we go. So now maybe it becomes a little more obvious the effect that we're going for. So what we can do now is just kind of tweak the settings to something that we want. So let's do I don't know, maybe something like that. Sure. And another thing we're going to do is I'm going to change the interpolation from linear to smooth. Doesn't make a huge difference, but it kind of just changes the way that the Fresnel is affected. So now, once we unisolate this, we should see a difference. And it's added this beautiful kind of fake rim light across the whole thing. And it just adds this nice glow effect that we can see in a lot of these renders here. And you can go ahead and just tweak all of these to your heart's content. But for the most part, this is it. We've done it. We've gotten our nice material here in a very small amount of nodes. Like I said, you can go in and tweak all of your ramps. And yeah, that's it. I hope this helped you guys. If you have any questions, please leave your questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day or night or whatever it is, wherever you are. Bye, guys.